Welcome to Focus on Why, the podcast where reflection sparks action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and together we'll explore compelling stories, profound insights, and transformative experiences from inspiring guests worldwide. Feeling lost or unfulfilled? Searching for clarity, purpose, or meaning in your work and life? This podcast invites you on a journey of self-discovery to align your work with your values, shape your future with intention, and create a purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, are you considering creating a podcast, or are you already hosting one, but it's not producing the results you desire? As a podcast strategist, I can help you launch or relaunch a purposeful and profitable podcast that will inspire, entertain, and educate a global audience. Book a call with me today. The link is in the show notes, and let's transform your podcast vision into reality. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Harriet Bratt. Harriet, welcome. How are you?
Well, Amy, wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Oh, absolute pleasure. So what is it you're focusing on at the moment, Harriet?
We joked a little bit when we first connected about ADHD. So asking me about focus, I always find a slightly chuckling question. I try and I put as much energy as I can at the moment in focusing within my business at creating more impact. I have a very streamlined option with my speaking and with how I train speakers. And as someone that gets distracted by shiny objects and squirrels, this year is a priority of mine, which is one of the reasons I'm so glad we connected. And I saw your book, Focus on Why, into really focusing into the priority of my business and not giving a lot of scattered attention.
Oh my goodness, my avatar on Netflix, or one of them, is squirrel. You know, it's that whole, what's that shiny thing? I hear you.
Yeah.
Why creating more impact? What's important for you around that?
I feel, beautiful question as well. I feel for many of us in this industry or world, more often than not, it's something that we've experienced ourselves. It's something that we've gone through. And very much that is my story. I was someone that was bullied, victimized, and abused. And I found that I wasn't using my voice. I wasn't speaking my truth. I was constantly battling inside of my own mind of this sort of self-doubt and not fitting in, not belonging, feeling like everything I did was wrong. So I think when I went through this journey of healing and personal development and really understanding more about myself and showing up, I know it's a buzzword, but showing up authentically in a way that felt good to me, I couldn't help but notice just how amazing it felt. And the natural progression was to then share that with other people. I wanted as many people that felt the same way I did to have that hope, have that possibility, and then even more than that, have that shift and new way of being.
It's so annoying when a phrase such as showing up with authenticity and showing up authentically, as you just said, becomes a buzzword, because then it takes out the power of what it's there to stand for and what it actually means. So I hear this so often, of where an experience has then become the focus for a commercial way of helping others.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out about this journey of healing and personal development.
Yeah.
Was it a specified time, or is this still ongoing?
I mean, it's definitely ongoing. I think for me anyway, I've got a sort of a little saying, grow till we go. So I believe there will always be further expansion. There'll be areas that are blind to me right now that will evolve through healing, through growth, through expansion. But I would also say I've done a lot of the work. I've got a lot of the internal foundations now. And I would say it actually, it came from a place. I was in my sort of mid 30s, and I attended a personal development event for the first time. I didn't know this world. I'd heard a little bit through network marketing of some of the speakers, Les Brown and Tony Robbins, all the sort of bigger names at that time. And I just became obsessed. But what I would say is, when I first entered, I didn't realize how much my behavior was impacted by what I'd been through. So I just entered in this like flame of fire. Wow, this is amazing. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And I actually ended up becoming, first of all, a mentee, and then a crew member, then a team member, then a lead trainer, and eventually a business partner with somebody that already had a personal development company. So it was really in that space that I started doing my own healing. I had my own coaches. I did a lot of different events, different programs. I had a session of therapy, and for me personally, it wasn't quite the right modality, but I'm not throwing shade on that. It's immensely beneficial for many. So I really started, as you say, that journey within, and that led me to a point where I said I joined as a business partner. I was a woman, I was in my mid 30s, but actually I was a really vulnerable little girl that needed healing, attention, validation, and reassurance. So, about a year, 18 months later, I stepped into my power as a woman. I was friends with the little Harriet, and I was in a totally different place. So, it was then I was able to say, actually, thank you, but no thank you. I'm so grateful for everything, but I'm not aligned with this, and to step out and do it in a very different way. So I think the majority of my healing was in that time, but I do believe that growth is always a never-ending cycle.
And you said you became obsessed. What was it that captured your attention so much?
Just the possibility, the seeing a different way. I think, I'm sure we had a beautiful chat and you shared some of your story. And for many of your listeners here, I think we've all experienced, or maybe you're experiencing, a time in your life where you're not happy, you're not fulfilled, and maybe you put on a mask. And people with ADHD are particularly good at that, show up happy Harriet, smile on my face. But actually, yeah, I sort of realized there's another way. I don't need to be doing this 9 to 5 rat race job that I don't really enjoy. I don't really get much time with my friends and family. Like, there is another path, and especially becoming an international speaker. Like, I'm from Cornwall, the bottom county in the UK. At that time, there were no sort of keynote speakers, international speakers. I had to travel up to London to attend events. So it just opened up the doors of possibility and a different way of life, which I just, you know what right? I had no idea that it was possible to choose, create, and carve your own path.
Oh, you're speaking my language. And this life before your mid 30s and this life now, it sounds like they're absolutely incomparable in terms of, well, many different areas. This grow until we go, knowing that we don't know what that moment is. How do you fill each day growing?
I would say specifically my morning routine is absolutely my everyday growth, because within that I have a space of meditation. I have a space where I'm reading something that is either inspirational, educational, or motivational. I journal, I do my visualization, I connect, as your book, I focus on my why. I look at where I'm going. But then around that, I have coaches, I have mentors, I attend events, I attend webinars. I feel really blessed because I'm a speaker. So I both get to attend events as a speaker, but then I get to be in the audience and learn from all the other speakers, listening to podcasts such as your focus on why. I would say they're my key areas.
It reminds me very much of the Hal Elrod. He had a SAVERS
Yeah.
acronym. Yeah, really, really key. I remember reading that book. In fact, it was one of the first books I ever read back in 2016 that opened my eyes to the personal development world. And it was so pivotal because, again, it was based on a huge car accident that he had and how he then had taken himself through this. Something that I'm very keen to share is that you don't have to live a purposeful way of life having had a huge catalyst of a life experience, being bullied and victimized and abused as you have been. You can do that from a life where you haven't had these huge life-changing experiences.
hmm And actually, I love that you've shared that. And it's something I speak to often in our different events, because I feel there are so many people that almost dismiss themselves from development because they don't feel they've had this major moment in their life. But there's always room and a space for healing and growing. One of my beautiful friends who lives in Bermuda, she had an incredible childhood, an incredible life experience. Their family was very well off. They went on holidays whenever they wanted to, beautiful house near the water, living in Bermuda, boarding school in the UK. Everything was this beautiful, rosy picture. And later on in life, she realized that it had actually sort of taught her, she felt everything should be very easy, and she didn't learn her own value of money, of finances. She didn't understand her worth. She didn't understand the responsibility of creating that path for yourself. And it was actually really sad. She had that lesson and started it, and then years later her father passed away, so she was able to have this moment of healing. But what I'm trying to say with that story is exactly what you shared. You might feel that you've had the most incredible childhood, but even in small nuances, there are things that affect us, or there are paths that we take because we think we have to, or that's the path that we've been told, or not necessarily even told, just shown that we should be doing. And actually, more often than not, when anyone takes time to connect in with their heart, their soul, their mind, whatever language you want to use, they connect to something different, and they have their own path and their own dream and their own desires.
And it's so key here. What I'm hearing from you, Harriet, is that this self-awareness that is so, it comes so naturally, and yet this is a learned self-awareness. This is something that we don't know to be looking for unless we actively choose to look within. It was something you said earlier about that, journey within, which is such a beautiful expression, because it is a journey within, but we don't, as you just shared with your rosy picture of your friend, sometimes you don't even reflect on what is happening or what has happened. So how is there any opportunity to move forward with intention?
I think obviously within this situation, the listeners are going to be hearing this podcast, and they've been drawn to it for a reason. They've been called to it for a reason, particularly with this focus on why title. So I would really encourage everybody just to sit and start asking those questions. And perhaps if that's not your style, go and have a conversation with somebody like Amy, myself, or there's many other coaches, leaders, healers, whatever title you want to fill in that blank with. But I would just encourage you to start asking the questions and having the conversations, either within yourself or externally, not with just anybody, sitting outside the pub that's just gonna spill the everyday answers, but someone that's been through this process themselves and can support you in providing that insight.
Oh, those pub conversations can be fatal. Oh my goodness. I
Right.
mean, that really amusing as an observer, but fatal to be a partaker in them and then to take that advice. My goodness, I'm sure many things have been lost in terms of fortunes by taking advice from someone sitting on a bar stool.
Exactly, exactly.
What's important to you around the elements of not speaking your truth and using your voice when you're working with speakers to amplify what it is that they have to say?
Yes, I think there's two things there, and one comes from the conversation we had a moment ago, and I loved your reflection. I had a moment of gratitude go through me when you said about before 30s and after 30s. So really, my core, my why, as your book is the feeling, the shift, the freedom. I saw some research by Harvard the other day that was studying and taking answers from several women that were deemed fulfilled, successful, happy in their own life. And they asked, what's brought this happiness? Why are you enjoying life so much? Why do you feel in your power? And the most resounding answer over and over again was living life on your terms. It wasn't the strategy. It wasn't the money they've made. It wasn't even the experiences. It was the freedom in living life on their terms. So for me, a huge part of living life on your terms is speaking, is communication, both inside your mind, right? Your internal communication, and then your external communication with friends, family, loved ones, and of course, speakers from live and virtual stages. So the real core of my why is freedom of expression. But the second, in particular with speakers, was, as I say, I attend so many different events, and I really am, anyone that knows me, I am there first thing in the morning. I'm the last to leave at the end. I don't care what event it is, who's speaking, I am present in that room. So I get to learn so much. So it came from me studying other speakers to progress myself. But what I started to see over and over again, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Amy, you go to an event and there are some speakers that captivate. They get their information across, they get people taking action. You can see the shifts in the room, you can see everyone's paying attention, manically taking notes. And then there's speakers where the audience sits back and gets their phone out, starts sending a message, starts thinking about what they're having for dinner, whatever it might be. And I really saw this pattern of individuals with incredible wisdom, knowledge, information that can make such a difference and be so powerful in someone's life. But the problem was they weren't communicating it in an effective way. I always say it's one thing to speak, it's another to impact. So that was where the second passion was born, in helping speakers express in a much more powerful way to both create more impact when they speak, but also create more income from their speaking.
I love that distinction between the feeling, the shift, the freedom, almost like it's, I don't know whether you were reiterating one point or almost sharing a process.
Probably a bit of both. Nice observation.
What does a shift mean for you?
A shift for me means, in the context that we are speaking, something being a certain way and then having an insight, a moment, a conversation, something that happens where you no longer return to that same way.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I'm always looking for the shift in a coaching conversation. It's sometimes so imperceptible that it could go be missed, but it's so key to share it when you see it or feel it or a witness to it with your coachee. And that shift of insight, sometimes it can be just a slight shrug or a sort of a non-verbal shift, but highlighting it then takes the whole conversation to a different level.
Absolutely. And I would say it's exactly the same with speaking. When you're on that stage and you're looking out at your audience, are you seeing the moments where the eyes go, oh, for anyone that can't see us right now, my eyes are like the mask, Ace Ventura. Their eyes move. They start frantically taking notes. They start asking more questions about a particular topic. And again, for me, and I'm sure it's the same with your coaching, it's exactly in that moment where you need to adapt and be with them in that shift. Lean into the shift and support your audience in going through that. But I think a lot of speakers, I don't know so much with coaches, are so sort of set in their own content and what they're delivering that sometimes they miss these magic moments with the audience that, if they lean into it, would create that much more impact and allow that shift to be more sustainable.
And we started this conversation by you slightly chuckling with the "what is your focus on the moment" response, with the ADHD sort of tag onto that. Being present to the moment, being the first to get into a room and the last to leave, and keen and studying and being present, how do you manage that with that distraction of focus that is also present?
It's taken me a long time. I'm going to absolutely say that first. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And even when I thought I was being focused, when I would really reflect on what I was doing, I'd notice I'm still being distracted. And I would also say, for anybody that when you get to a certain point, I think especially with ADHD, but also just being human, there are going to be temptations. There's going to be other areas, opportunities, priorities, situations that show up in your life that can potentially lead to distraction. But I think for me, the key areas in holding that focus and maintaining it is, one, absolutely that internal work, having the awareness of self to go, whoa, pause. Does this need to happen right now? Do you need to run with this? Take a breath, sit with it. So again, that self-awareness and the pause. Right up until probably my late 30s, I don't think I knew what the pause meant. So the power of the pause. And then secondly, I've shown it a few times, and I promise all the listeners, she didn't pay me to do this, but exactly what it says on your book. When you know your why, you'll endure anyhow. But it's also what will keep you going, keep you focused, keep you connected to what it is that you're working on. So I very often don't just think of my goal. I think of why. I think of why this is important to both me and the people that I'm working with. What does my life look like? What does my lifestyle look like? What does my relationship with my husband look like? How often do I get to see my family? Where do I travel? Like all of these areas of focus that are important to me. When I know I'm aligned with that, I can look at any distraction and simply ask myself the question, is this, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, is this taking me towards my ultimate goal, or is this taking me away? Is this distracting me? So I think with those constant questions and processes, that's what helps me stay mostly focused.
Like honestly, it's so there's so much energy and passion here, Harriet. I find it hard to believe that there was this other version that you shared earlier, the vulnerable little girl. But this is the power of the work.
Absolutely. And I want to honor you, myself, and anybody listening that's on that path, because as you know, it's not easy. There's that, again, it's become a little bit cliche, but people say that dark night of the soul. Well, blimey, if I just had one dark night, it really is a process. And even just last week, I had an afternoon where I just really had that like questioning, self-doubt. And thankfully, I know what to do when I get myself into that state, but it still shows up. And that's why I believe it's a process that we can always be working with and working through. But I encourage everybody, like, give it time. Don't set your goal at the top of the mountain and think that you're going to jump up there by tomorrow. Yes, have your goal, but put your focus into the steps, put your focus into the day to day, put the focus into the present. What can I do right here and now to support myself, to support my business, to support my relationship, to support my health? Listeners, fill in the blanks, whatever is relevant to you. But yeah, it's an ongoing process.
And it's so true, this give it time message, because there you were as a speaker who was based in the southern tip of the United Kingdom, realizing that if you wanted to be speaking internationally, you're going to have to travel, you're going to have to get up and move and change that circumstance. I remember, in fact, it was reading that very same book, which was The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, back in December 2016, where I said out loud to my husband, I am going to speak to thousands of people
Yes.
about what I'm really passionate about. And he just turned around to me and said, and he wasn't belittling my dream at all. He was just like, I don't think that's possible. In terms of at that time, where I was and what I was doing, no, that wasn't a possibility. But here I am in 2025 with a podcast that is downloaded in 141 countries. And I am a professional speaker who is speaking to thousands of people, who has an absolute clarity of the focus on why, written a book. And yes, it does take time. This is not an overnight success. This has been years in the making.
Exactly. And first of all, let's absolutely honor and acknowledge your journey. And on behalf of all of your listeners, thank you for what you're doing. But I think there's something really key in what you said there, because so many people let partners, family, friends hold them back in their dreams. When I first told my mom, she's a care home manager, a very successful entrepreneur in her own right, but a care home manager, like, with absolutely no idea of this world and being a speaker, hence me also not knowing anything about this world. So when I first came back, and in my very ADHD Harriet way went, guess what? I'm going to be an international speaker. I'm going to travel the world speaking to thousands of people and impacting them. She looked at me like I just told her I'm going to Mars to hang out with the aliens. But the reason people say that actually isn't, most of the time, it's not because they don't believe in you. It's just they don't know that world. So they are speaking from their experience and their perspective. And that absolutely doesn't make them right. It just shows where they're at and their knowledge at that precise moment.
And it's so key because if you do trust other people's voices more than your own, then you will believe that truth that is being shared. And just having that perspective of knowing that it is a truth, but not the truth, it's someone's reality, not your reality. Look, we are talking the same language here. What is it, Harriet, that you are wanting to achieve with this creating more impact? What is the vision that you have?
My vision is to create a space where millions of individuals truly feel the freedom of expression in themselves, in their behavior, and in their speech. And that ripple effect creates more compassion, more kindness, more love, more individuality, and yet more unity across the world.
So those are your values, those key elements there, compassion, kindness.
Hey, great spot and good question. I would say yes, they are, along with loyalty. I'm going to say freedom again, even though I think I've said it several times. That's a key one for me. Loyalty, transparency, and fun. I think when we get into our adult life, we sort of forget about being playful and having fun. So that's actually a big value of mine that I would love to spread and share with others too.
Oh, we share that one also. And it's in making things fun, in making it with ease, this journey that is not easy does become more enjoyable. And that's the thing, is that it doesn't have to be overwhelming and difficult and a sort of a drudge. It's no, this is an enjoyment because this is your life. This
Yeah.
is part of it.
Exactly, exactly. And I think keep holding that, it's possible. Shift can happen, change, depending where everybody is in their journey. When you were sharing that, I remember, must be about 5 or 6 years ago now, when I was, again, just starting this journey, just starting this adventure within. And I remember someone talking about your emotions and responding rather than reacting. And at that time, I was, I chuckle as I share, a very feisty, very opinionated woman, that when backed in a corner would lash out to somebody close to me, and my pain inside came out as anger. And when I was on this journey of healing, I remember turning one day, my husband and I had arrived. We were in the car and we just arrived at our house. We'd been away for a week, and I can't remember what triggered it off, but we were having some sort of argument in the car, and I noticed my anger coming, and I couldn't ignore. I knew that this was my choice. I could respond here rather than doing what I've always done and just lashing out. But I got out the car and I remember shouting, I know that it's not you. I know this is about me. You're not doing anything wrong right now. I just am angry and I want to be angry. And I slammed the boot and ended up smashing the windscreen of the car. But it was such an amazing moment for me, because it really was like, you've created this. You've just done this. And it was almost like snapshots of all these moments where I'd let that anger come in and I'd reacted to it rather than bringing myself to calm and having the conversation. So, yes, it's absolutely a process. And I personally feel the hardest bit is when you first find out about everything, because you want to be so much further ahead. You want to be able to have that calmness, that chill, that response, whatever it might be. And yet, like, shift can happen in a second, but embodiment takes time.
It's such a key distinction again to make between knowing what it is and then knowing how to then respond and to then take that on board as a habit.
Yes.
That's the harder element for sure. I feel like this that share of where you described how your pain came out of anger and the window subsequently smashing is such a fantastic story for people to hold on to. And whilst it's going to help them, it's not going to help anybody in the glazing industry because they're going to have so many less windows now to fix. But no, I mean, joking aside, it really is a really brilliant story to share in terms of what it represents and just what the consequences are to how you can respond in a moment. So this calmness, this shift that you now have, this new version of Harriet, albeit the fun and full of life Harriet. What's next?
Continuous expansion, everything I'm doing now, but bigger, more bolder, more fun, and so many things that I'm not aware of, right? I'm very set on certain stages that I'd like to speak on, certain collaborations that I'd like to do, but I'm also very open to everything that I don't know that also leads. My big speaking goal is speaking in a stadium, and I'm also very aware that I don't know the person I'm going to meet that is that connection yet, or the event I'm going to speak at that opens that door. So I'm very clear in my path and what I'm doing, but I'm also very open to what I don't know yet.
I love that openness. It really is. I mean, it fits with the freedom of expression to understand that you have to be open to new opportunities and be also open to not having all the answers, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And being okay with that.
Again, the next level of this unlocked, should you say. Oh my goodness, I could talk to you for ages, Harry. I really could. And I'd love to hear more of your stories, especially ones that you share on stage. And I'm sure other people who are listening would also like that. What's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Thank you again very, very much just for this space and this conversation. I could absolutely speak to you for hours, Amy. I would say the best place is my website, harrietbratt.com. I also invite you, I'm on all the usual social medias, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, as Harriet Bratt Speaker, and I warmly invite you to drop into my messages.
Amazing. Well, all those links are in the show notes. Again, thank you. And I look forward to following your journey, this incredible journey of the unknown and continuous expansion that you're taking yourself on. And all those who are with you, what a joy that's going to be for the world that you're creating this stage, this platform for people to have this ability to speak and create these ripples of compassion and kindness and unity. A beautiful vision. What are your final words for the listener, please, Harriet?
My final words for your listeners are: be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, but trust yourself enough to step fully in your power, follow your heart, and do what is important to you.
This episode's over, but let's keep the conversation going. How has this episode impacted you? Share your insights, takeaways, and reflections with actions on social media, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback creates powerful ripple effects, helping others to discover its value. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for links on how to work with me, where to buy my new book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life, available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and where to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.